Now, you might be wondering, why do I have dark sunglasses on? Do I have a Michigan hoodie on? Why do I look like this? Well, it is because your Michigan Wolverines just won the national championship. I'll tell you guys after this video why I became a Michigan Wolverines fan, because I also am a San Francisco 49ers fan. I'll also break down the players that boosted their draft stock in this game, in this national championship game. Not just Michigan Wolverines, but also Washington Husky players that boosted their draft stock. And I will also just break down this game in general, Michael Penix's future in the NFL draft, all after this. Welcome, everyone. Your Michigan Wolverines are now national champions. Sixth time, just the sixth time in history that they are 15, that they've gone, just sixth time in history that a college football team has gone 15-0. And this is in the major college football playoffs. So D1 college football playoffs, sixth time in history that a team has gone 15-0 and also won the national championship, just the sixth time in major college football playoffs. And man, it feels good, but we have to get into it a little bit. What made this game? Which players made this game so interesting to watch, and which players boosted their NFL draft stock? Because I think it's very important to cover this topic, because we have a lot to talk about. Michigan obviously gets the win over the Washington Huskies. Michigan Wolverines gets the win, Washington Huskies 34-13. So we're going to start with kind of the Michigan side of things, and then we'll kind of turn to some Washington Huskies players that did well in this game. Michael Penix. Well, actually, let's get to Blake Corum. So this guy was very interesting because Blake Corum was really the motor to this game. A lot of what Michigan was trying to do was, Michigan didn't throw the ball a lot in this game, 10 for 18, but they were basically going to run it down the Washington Huskies' throat. They knew that the Washington Huskies had been pretty weak all year at stopping the run, and at times in this game, it did not work, the run game for Michigan. There were some times in this game where this offense was completely stagnant, but they stuck with it. They stuck with the run game. Their defense was able to get enough stops to where they could keep the offense afloat, and the offense could continue to run the ball. And it worked. It worked. Blake Corum left this game with 134 yards, 21 carries, which is a 6.4 average. And he had 2 TDs in this game, rushing TDs as well in this game. Now, Blake Corum, I don't know what his exact draft projection was before this game started, but I mean, I'm assuming he's one of the best backs entering the draft in this next year. And I'm assuming he was projected around the second round, third, maybe mid-second round. I think he's got to be an early second round pick after what he showed today. After, a guy for his stature, smaller back, can be a workhorse back in the NFL. I think a lot of teams value that, and a lot of teams value his speed because he can play any style of run game that you want to play. Do you want to play outside zone, inside zone? He has the speed for outside zone and the power for inside zone. My only kind of flaw and weakness with him is, since he is a smaller statured back, does he have enough juice to last and be a long-term back for an NFL franchise? That is my concern with him, because he is a smaller back. He could be dealing with injuries. So Blake Corum was one standout for this game. Let's go to another part of this game that was very key. The Michigan Michigan quarterback, JJ McCarthy. He wasn't great in this game, but one thing that I have noticed with JJ McCarthy in this playoffs, whether it's against Alabama or whether it's against the Washington Huskies in the national championship, one thing I have noticed, he has done the right thing when it has mattered, and he hasn't turned the ball over either. You know, he wasn't great in this game, but Michigan, so they were up 20-13, but their offense at one point in this game was really, really, really stagnant. It was about midway through the fourth quarter. They hadn't really got done much. All second half. And JJ McCarthy, mid fourth quarter, they need him to lead a game sealing drive, and he does that. It starts with Colston Loveland hitting Colston Loveland in a tight window over the middle, and Colston Loveland takes it for 40. This was midway through the fourth. And then obviously, as I said before, Corum caps it off with a TD. And then that put Michigan up 27-13 and kind of sealed the game midway through the fourth quarter. But and it was the same thing with Alabama. They're down 20-13, Michigan, and this is their last chance to score. JJ McCarthy leads a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful drive where he leads them all the way down the field, 75 yards, and scores a touchdown to tie it up and put it into overtime. So when it has mattered, JJ McCarthy has gotten it done. 10 for 18 in this game, 140 yards and no interceptions. That's really the big thing, is he doesn't turn the ball over. If you're an NFL team, you want to look for a guy who's been safe with the ball. Now, to me, JJ McCarthy, as far as draft stock, I was kind of just recapping his game, his performance in the playoffs, but we're here to discuss what these players' draft stock is. And since I am mainly just an NFL channel, that is what I'm mainly here for, because I mainly just cover the NFL, and I know my viewers just cover the NFL. So I'm going to talk about his draft stock now. So basically, his draft stock, I'd say, is around a second round right now. I think he is a player that maybe isn't a right away starter, but the Michigan Wolverines haven't put much trust on his shoulders, but he has the arm, he has the athletic ability, because he is a very mobile quarterback. His stature is what you want in the NFL. He's a player that you could draft in the mid to early second round, and maybe 1-2 years down the line, you have a veteran quarterback mentoring him, and maybe 1 to 2 years down the line, he becomes your starting quarterback. That's kind of where I see his role and what his draft stock is after this Michigan win. And so that's kind of where I see it there for JJ McCarthy. Let's get to Michael Penix, though, on the other side of the ball. Washington Huskies quarterback Michael Penix. He was projected a mid-first round pick. I've gone back and forth on him because he didn't play great today. He really did not play great today. But I will say that Penix, if I were to rate him, I think, and kind of break his performance down, I do believe that Penix has the tools, obviously, that he possesses the tools, obviously, to be an elite starting level quarterback. The only thing that I see with Penix is he tends to, especially in this game, the offense that he was running was working against every single team this last season. That's why Washington was 14-0 coming into this game. But when he faced an elite Michigan defense, that kind of elite nature that he had started to break down, because he was playing an elite defense. Through 3 quarters, Michael Penix, 18 for 32, 1 TD, 1 interception. My kind of breakdown with him, he has a strong arm, but he tends to force it a little bit. The interception that he threw to Will Johnson, the Michigan cornerback, down the sideline, he could have easily thrown that away. Instead, he kind of got pressured. He panicked and tried to get it to his nearest target, and it got picked off. So Michael Penix, to me, he has a strong arm. He has a great deep ball, but sometimes over the middle, he's a little bit inaccurate, and that's because of his mechanics. I feel like he muscles the ball a little too much. He puts too much effort into it and just slings it too much. And he puts too much power on the ball. And sometimes over the middle, he's a little bit inaccurate because he's putting too much power on that ball. And it kind of goes over either it's low or it goes over the receiver's heads. So he is a bit inaccurate sometimes. Um, and sometimes he's trying to make a big play. And so Michigan did a really good job in this game of limiting the big plays that they were going to give him. And they were making him go more down, like methodically work the field, which is not his game. So great deep ball, a little bit of an inaccuracy issue. The way you beat Michael Penix is by basically taking away the deep ball and putting pressure on him. That is what Michigan did so well in this game. They blitzed the heck out of him, and they were able to get home with 4 pass rushers as well. Their defensive line was elite today versus Michael Penix. But he's a guy that I see maybe a team, I was saying, okay, with all the talent he has, maybe he could be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. I think after today, Michael Penix probably doesn't get to that marker. I think after today, Michael Penix, I'd say probably is a late to mid, maybe even early second round pick that a team takes to develop because he still needs some works on his mechanics, as I said before. And so I think a team, he needs to develop in the next level for 1 to 2 years, and maybe he will. But he has all the traits, and he has the experience as well to become an elite quarterback. Let's move on to another draft stock player, and this draft stock player is the receiver for Washington, Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze, wide receiver for Washington, big time player. Wasn't a huge, again, times in this game he completely disappeared. He's again wide receiver for Washington. At times in this game he disappeared. But he did end up finishing off the game. I believe it was 5 receptions for 87 yards. He has a perfect build. He's a big-bodied receiver, 6'3", 215 pounds. Most likely will be a top 10 pick because there were times in this game where he was able to beat Michigan's top corner, Will Johnson, and he got some big catches over him, and it showed 5 receptions for 87 yards. At times, yes, he disappeared, but you put him in an offense with a super elite quarterback. And this guy has the perfect build to be a receiver, the perfect hands. He has the speed. So yes, he is going to be a top 10 pick, regardless of what his performance said today. And, with everything that Washington struggled with today, with the inaccuracy issues with the quarterback, with the accuracy issues with the quarterback, with everything Washington was thrown at today, as far as the Michigan defense was throwing at them, Odunze stayed relatively productive, and that showed with 5 receptions, 87 yards. So with all the problems that Washington had, Odunze made it happen. The next guy we have to talk about is Michigan safety / cornerback Mike Sainristil. And this guy, Will Johnson, cornerback for the Michigan Wolverines, I'll get to him later, won the defensive MVP in this game, but I really think it should have gone to Mike Sainristil. He forced, I'll bring up a really good play that he made. About 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It was a 3rd and 13, and great coverage on the Washington receiver, breaks it up, forces a 4th and 13, which Washington, I believe, ended up that basically ended up the game because the Washington, after that play, didn't convert the 4th and 13, and they ended up losing. At that point, it was 27-13 with 4 minutes left. Washington was near the red zone, and Sainristil breaks it up, forces it to a 4th and 13, and that kind of ended the game for Washington because they didn't convert the 4th and 13. So that was a big play. And then also in this game, 8 tackles, I believe it was, 1 interception that almost went back for a touchdown. Will Johnson had a huge interception, but as far as tackles and dominance goes in this game, I think Mike Sainristil had him beat. He was already going to be a high drafted safety in this next year's draft because he is declaring for the draft. But I think he's going to be even higher after what we saw this year. And you have to give a hats off to Mike Sainristil, safety out of Michigan, because he's going to probably be a 1st round pick for sure now that he had such a good performance against Washington. One of the best passing attacks, let you know, one of the best passing attacks in college football. Another Michigan kind of position group. I'm just going to highlight the whole position group because they were all great. Michigan's D line. We have to talk about this because this whole D line, Mason Graham, Kenneth Graham, I believe it was, Derek Moore, Chris Jenkins, they all, I mean, I believe the only defensive lineman that's going to the draft this year is Chris Jenkins for the Michigan Wolverines because he is a senior. But all of these guys boosted their legacy in the future. If all of them declare for the NFL draft, they all boosted their stock because they won the national championship and because all of the starting guys and Michigan defensive linemen played so well down the stretch. And especially in this game, I mean, constant pressure on Michael Penix. And that's why he had so bad accuracy issues because the pressure was constant for the Michigan defensive line, and it really showed. Chris Jenkins, who is entering next year's NFL draft, majorly boosted his stock, which, hey, I don't know where he was projected to go before, but it's going to be higher after his performance, not only in the playoffs, but in this national championship. Let's get to Washington's defensive line because they weren't bad either. I know that the run game, Michigan kind of controlled this game with the run, but I will say that they weren't bad either, Washington's D-line. A lot of times you saw McCarthy trying to go downfield with the football, but just couldn't. I mean, there were times when they tried to hit a big play, Michigan. But in this game, as far as the pass rush goes on Washington's D-line, they played really well in this game because JJ McCarthy tried to go downfield, tried to hit these throws, but a lot of times he was scrambling and under pressure and had to get these balls out quick, which didn't bode well for Michigan's pass game. So I will say the one weakness was they were getting gashed in the run game a lot of the game. They were able to keep it in check at times, but then at times Washington's defensive line gave up huge plays to Michigan's run game. And so they were good at times, but then god awful at other times to Michigan's run game. And so I think the defensive pass rush got a huge boost from this game. The stock up for the Washington's pass rush in this game, but stock down for their run defense in this game. But we have to highlight a few guys. I mean, Braylon Trice Jr., who is entering this next year's draft, was huge. He's a defensive end for the Washington Huskies. And it's a very experienced defensive line group. Braylon Trice Jr. Braylon Trice was a junior. You had Tooley, I can't remember I can't really pronounce his last name, is a senior. You had, so just a few guys along that defensive line. I'm trying to think. A bunch of names I cannot pronounce along this Washington defensive line, but all of them are seniors or juniors. So all of them very experienced and will be entering this year's draft, or most of them at least. So a lot of talent coming up from Washington in this year's draft. So the last player we have to kind of get to before we get out of here, because I know this has been quite a long episode, longer than I intended it to be. Will Johnson won the defensive MVP award for this year's national championship. Will Johnson, cornerback for the Michigan Wolverines. Now, he is not entering this year's draft because he is not eligible, but he's a sophomore, so he'll probably go next year. And he was rated as one of the best cornerbacks in the draft of 2025. Will Johnson for Michigan, the cornerback. And today he was up and down, but he made some big plays in this game that really swung the momentum Michigan's way, including the interception at the beginning of the third quarter where he leaped out, and the ball skills that Will Johnson possessed was just absolutely uncanny in this game. Leaps out at the last moment, puts his hand under the ball and secures it for the interception. That was a huge play in this game. And ultimately this game, Michigan did not turn the ball over on offense. Washington only turned it over once, and that really was the major factor in this game for Michigan, was they were able to get one takeaway over Washington. Well, at that point, they had never turned it over. Now, later in the game, Michigan got another takeaway from Washington, another interception. But at that point in the game, there had been no takeaways. So Will Johnson has to be notified. I mean, it has to be amplified. If we're talking about the success of the Michigan defense, you have to talk about this guy. And the hype was that in 2025, he's going to be a first-round pick. I would absolutely think so. Because, yes, he did get burned a few times in this game, but he made big plays when it mattered. And that's all that counts. So, guys, have a good rest of your day. The Camper Report, I will real quickly say why I became a Michigan Wolverines fan. Basically, Jim Harbaugh used to coach the 49ers, be a head coach for the 49ers for a few years. And I basically, when I was a very young Niners fan, kind of not fell in love with him, but I definitely, when he left the 49ers, I wanted to see where he went. He ended up going to Michigan. Ever since then, I kind of started liking them, and I've liked them for about 8 years, ever since he was there. So shout out to Jim Harbaugh for kind of winning over a Michigan fan, which was me, and I've liked him ever since. It feels good to win this national championship. To all the Michigan Wolverine fans out there, have a good rest of your night and party it up. That's all I got to say. I got a driver's license driving test tomorrow in the morning, so I've got to get to bed for that. But everyone, have a good rest of your night. Most of you will see this in the morning, but have a good rest of your night, and we will see you guys